Hey, my name is David, and I won't lie to you like everyone else will. My town is not full of the smartest people, nor the cleanest people, and especially not the nicest people. My town is mostly full of drug dealers, addicts, and gangs. There's at least one shooting a day, and you always have to be careful walking home from school. If you say the wrong thing or look at the wrong person, you'll be shot on sight. I live in Felton, but I call it Doomsville. In the pleasant town of Doomsville, I go to school as a high school senior. I lived here most of my life. I moved here when I was 7. It didn't quite hit me that the place was dangerous until I got shot at when I was 15. However, my dad works at a law firm in town and gets paid a lot. So that is why we stay here. My mom works at home babysitting children in the neighborhood. You can tell that the parents of some of these kids are gang members because of how rugged they are. I swear, some of these 10-year-olds are stronger than I am. On my way home from school the other day, this group of gangsters came out of an alleyway and started to follow me. I started to walk a little faster, trying to get away from them, but they sped up with me. I sprinted forward, moving as quickly as I could, but there was a guy waiting for me around the corner. He clotheslined me and I fell to the ground. The wind was knocked out of my lungs and I gasped for air. They started kicking the back of my head, stomach, and my back. They told me to stand up to give them my wallet, and as soon as they took my money, one of the guys stabbed me right in the stomach. I was in excruciating pain. I could feel the blood oozing out of my wound. It was warm. I put my hand on it and pressed down to stop the bleeding. I took my phone out of my pocket and dialed 911. I was only in the hospital for a few days because the wound was minor. It could have been a whole lot worse. I could be dead right now. A few weeks went by and I've been a lot safer coming home. I take different paths avoiding the alleys and the gangs. I came home today to my mom crying. When I asked her why, she told me that my dad had been gunned down in a drive-by. Why are these gangs targeting me and my family all of a sudden? What did we do? I want to avenge my dad's death. I want whoever killed him to suffer torture until they die. For the next 3 years, I did nothing but work out and get stronger. I studied up on these gangs and the people that killed my father. I found out where they live, what they do during the day, and when they go to sleep at night. There are awful people that either sell drugs, use drugs, kill people, or even all three. I can't wait until they get what they deserve. I scouted out a place that the cops never check and no one ever goes to. It's a broken down apartment building on the outskirts of town. During the night, I snuck into all 3 of the killers' houses, tied up their hands and bagged their heads, and drugged them into my van. Killer number 1, Tia Alvarez, 23 with a daughter. Been in jail multiple times for selling and using drugs and even prostitution. Killer number 2, Kevin Stone, 21 and no children living with him. Hasn't been to jail, but had many stacks of cocaine and weed in his house. He won't be needing those anymore. Last but not least, killer number 3, Carter McBlade, 30 with 2 sons and a wife. Been in and out of jail almost his whole life, but his bail has been paid almost every time. These are my 3 victims tonight. It was 2 a.m. when I got them to the apartment. I pushed them out of the van, knocking them to the ground. I pulled each one up and put a gun to their head, telling them to walk inside. As soon as everyone was inside, I locked each one in their designated room. I then prepared myself for what was about to happen. I could hear them struggling to try to get out. I was going to enjoy every minute. I went to Kevin's room first. I tied him to a chair and turned on an overhead light. He cried and pleaded for me to let him go. It just made everything a whole lot better. I grabbed a small knife and started to cut up his arm, deep slices inch by inch. I then stabbed the knife into his stomach, twisted it, and left it there. He would bleed out to his death. I went to Carter's room next. Once again, tied him to a chair and turned on the overhead light. I asked him about his 2 children. Asked him how much he loved them.
With all my heart.
He told me he would do anything for them. Even die for them. I chuckled. I grabbed some pliers from a toolbox in the room. I took each finger and snapped the bone one by one. I then took a hammer and shattered his right shin. I could hear the bone crush. My final blow was to the back of his head with the claw end of the hammer. Blood trickled down from his head, down his neck, to his back, eventually pooling on the ground. Oh, poor, poor Tia. She never even had a chance. When I walked into the room, she swung at me with her tied-up fist and hit me in the jaw. After I recovered, I kicked her chest and she plummeted to the ground. I got on top of her and pummeled her face. I picked her up and tied her to the chair and turned on the light. I grabbed my knife and slashed her cheek. I ripped open her shirt and carved my initials in her back. And finally, I cut off all her toes and punctured her left lung. Seeing all these people dead satisfied me. They killed my father and several other innocent people. They got what they deserved. To finish my night, I called the police and told them what happened. Before they got there, I took out my gun, put it to my head, and pulled the trigger.